Crossed wires. Dominic Reed squinted at his watch as he rushed out of the Westbrook Hotel. His investors wouldn't wait forever. He was already 15 minutes behind schedule. The autumn wind whipped around the corners of the glass building, scattering golden leaves across the pavement. He spotted a sleek blue sedan pulling up to the curb right on time. Without hesitation, he yanked open the back door and slid inside. Finally, he muttered, already tapping on his tablet, "Take me to the Meridian Tower and step on it." A woman behind the wheel turned around, her eyebrows raised in surprise. She wasn't the usual driver from his company's car service. Her warm brown eyes widened slightly as she pushed a strand of curly hair behind her ear. "I think there's been a mistake," she said, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. "I'm here to pick up a James Patterson for the Thornfield wedding. It wouldn't happen to be you, would it?" Dominic looked up from his device, suddenly registering the unfamiliar face and the lack of the company logo on the dashboard. He checked the car's license plate through the window. Definitely not his ride. A notification pinged on his phone. His actual driver was stuck in traffic 6 blocks away and would be delayed another 20 minutes. "I apologize," Dominic said stiffly, reaching for the door handle. "Wrong car." Just then, his phone rang. The investor's assistant, informing him that Mr. Yamamoto had been called away on an emergency and needed to reschedule their meeting for tomorrow morning. The call ended, leaving Dominic sitting in a stranger's car with nowhere urgent to be. For the first time in months, the driver her name tag read Nora was watching him with curiosity. "Everything okay there, not James?" Something about her warm, open expression made Dominic pause. Hadn't taken a day off in over a year. His company, Sentinel Tech, had consumed every waking hour since its founding. The prospect of an unexpected, free afternoon felt strangely liberating. "I'm Dominic," he said, surprising himself. "And it seems my meeting just got canceled." "Well, Dominic, I still have a best man to find for this wedding," Nora replied, checking the time. "Unless you're volunteering? You're wearing a suit already?" He should have gotten out of the car, should have called his assistant to fill the suddenly empty afternoon with productive work. Instead, Dominic found himself saying, "How far is this wedding?" "Thornfield Gardens. About an hour north. The ceremony starts at 3. Nora tilted her head, studying him. "Wait, you're not seriously considering crashing a stranger's wedding, are you?" "Of course not," Dominic replied automatically, though. The idea held an absurd appeal. When was the last time he'd done something completely unexpected? "But I could use a drive. My regular car service just bailed on me." Nora laughed, the sound bright and unrestrained. "So you want me to drive you around while I look for the actual best man I'm supposed to pick up?" "I'll pay double your regular rate," Dominic offered. "I just need ... space to think." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right, mysterious suit man. But I'm still stopping to find James. I'm not letting my friend walk down the aisle without his best man." As Nora pulled away from the curb, Dominic felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the exhilarating sensation of having no plan, no schedule, no expectations. Just the open road and a strangely compelling conversation with a woman who knew nothing about his wealth, his company, or his reputation as the coldest mind in tech innovation. So Nora asked, catching his eye in the rearview mirror, "What?" Kind of thinking needs a moving vehicle and a wedding hunt as backdrop. For once, Dominic didn't have a calculated answer. And somehow, that felt exactly right. False pretenses, the winding roads leading to Thornfield Gardens gave Dominic plenty of time to observe Nora Bennett. She drove with confident ease, one hand on the wheel, while the other gestured animatedly as she spoke about her photography business. Her car dashboard displayed a small collection of miniature Polaroid prints, snapshots of landscapes, city skylines, and candid moments of strangers laughing. "So you capture other people's special moments for a living," Dominic noted, having moved to the front passenger seat after their first stop to search for the elusive James Patterson. "I capture truth," Nora corrected, taking a sharp turn that sent autumn leaves swirling in their wake. "Everyone has a face they show the world, and one they keep hidden." "I'm interested in the moment when the mask slips." Irony wasn't lost on Dominic. Here he was, essentially wearing a mask of anonymity. If Nora knew he was Dominic Reed of Sentinel Technologies, worth nearly $3 billion and featured in last month's Fortune magazine as the algorithm king, she might look at him differently. There. Third attempt to locate James proved as unsuccessful as the previous two. After calling the groom who wasn't answering, Nora pulled into a small roadside cafe with a look of concern. "The ceremony starts in 40 minutes, she said, checking her watch. "I'm going to try one more number, but if I can't find James... ... The wedding will proceed without a best man," Dominic finished for her. Nora bit her lip. Ethan would be devastated. He and James had been friends since kindergarten. An absurd idea formed in Dominic's mind. What if... ... What if... What? Nora looked at him suspiciously. "What if I filled in? Just for the ceremony?" The words surprised even him as they left his mouth. Nora stared at him for a full 10 seconds. "You can't be serious. You don't know Ethan or the bride. You don't know any of these people." "Exactly," Dominic replied, warming to the idea. "It's no expectations, no history, no complications. I wear a suit, stand where I'm told, hold the rings, and disappear afterward. No one needs to know." "That's insane," Nora said, but her expression had shifted from shock to calculation. Although ... double quotes, her phone buzzed with a text message. She read it and groaned. "James is stuck at O'Hare. His flight was delayed, and he won't make it in time for the ceremony." Dominic raised an eyebrow. "Seems like fate is making the decision for us." 20 minutes later, Dominic found himself being horridly briefed on his supposed lifelong friendship with groom Ethan Morris as they rushed toward the garden venue. Nora had called ahead with a vague explanation about James having an emergency. Substitute, which had been met with confusion but desperate acceptance. "Remember, you've known him since you were 5. You were both obsessed with dinosaurs, and you once broke his mother's favorite vase playing indoor baseball," Nora instructed. As they parked, dinosaurs and baseball. "Got it." Dominic straightened his tie, an unexpected flutter of nervousness in his stomach. When was the last time he'd felt genuinely challenged? Boardroom negotiations and million-dollar deals had become routine, but this was terrifying in an exhilarating way. The wedding coordinator, a harried woman named Vanessa, rushed over as they approached. "Thank goodness you're here. You must be the stand-in best man. We're starting in 15 minutes." Before Dominic could respond, he was whisked away to join the groom and groomsmen. Ethan Morris, a nervous-looking man with kind eyes, seemed too preoccupied with his impending marriage to question Dominic's presence too deeply. "James told me so much about you," Ethan said distractedly as someone pinned a boutonniere to Dominic's lapel. "Thanks for stepping in last minute." "Wouldn't miss it," Dominic replied smoothly, falling into the role with surprising ease. From across the garden, he caught Nora's eye. She was setting up her camera, presumably to document the ceremony as a backup to the official photographer. She gave him a thumbs up, and a grin that made something warm unfurl in his chest. As the music started and the wedding party began to assemble, Dominic realized he was doing something completely selfless for the first time in years. There was no business advantage, no networking opportunity, no strategic value in standing in for a stranger's best man. He was simply helping because he could. The ceremony was intimate and heartfelt. When the time came to present the rings, Dominic performed his role flawlessly. As the couple exchanged vows, he found himself glancing at Nora, who was capturing the moment with her camera, her expression absorbed and passionate. She caught him looking and tilted her head slightly, a private smile passing between them conspirators. In this strange, spontaneous charade, at the reception afterward, Dominic successfully deflected personal questions with vague responses that could apply to anyone. He gave a toast cobbled together from wedding speeches he'd heard before, focusing on universal themes of love and commitment rather than specific memories. "You're surprisingly good at this," Nora whispered as they briefly met by the dessert table. "Ever consider a career in acting?" "I prefer real life," Dominic replied, surprising himself with his honesty. "Though I'm not sure how much of my life has been real lately." As the evening wound down, the inevitable moment arrived. James Patterson himself appeared. Having finally made it from the airport, full of apologies and confusion at finding his role already filled, the time for Dominic's graceful exit had come. But as he slipped away from the celebration, Nora followed him to the parking lot, her camera still hanging around her neck. "Need a ride back to the city, mystery man?" she asked, her eyes bright in the glow of the string lights, and despite all logic, despite knowing the deception couldn't last, Dominic found himself saying yes. The proposition 2 weeks after the wedding, Dominic stood at the window of his penthouse office, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled. The Sentinel Technologies headquarters offered a commanding view of the skyline, but tonight, he found his thoughts drifting to a certain blue sedan and its driver. He had exchanged numbers with Nora after she'd dropped him off that night. Their texts had been casual. Friendly, he'd asked about her photography. She'd inquired if he'd been recruited for any more wedding impersonations. But he hadn't told her who he really was, and that omission felt increasingly uncomfortable. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. His executive assistant, Prisha, entered with a concerned expression. "The Blackwood Group is wavering on the investment," she announced, placing a folder on his desk. Harrison Blackwood specifically mentioned concerns about company culture and leadership stability. Dominic frowned. The Blackwood investment was crucial for Sentinel's expansion into medical technology. Did they provide specific feedback? "Mr. Blackwood believes you're too ... isolated." His exact words were brilliant, but detached. "He values family-centered leadership and long-term stability." Prisha hesitated. He also mentioned that all his major investment partners have solid personal foundations, marriages, families. "So I'm being judged on my marital status rather than my company's performance?" Dominic's voice had a sharp edge. "It's old-fashioned, but the Blackwood Group operates on old-fashioned principles," Prisha replied diplomatically. "Meeting with them is in 3 weeks, and they've invited you to bring a +1 to their annual charity gala the weekend before." After Prisha left, Dominic scrolled through his contacts, lingering on Nora's name. An idea from impulsive, perhaps unethical, but potentially effective. She had already proven herself capable of maintaining a charade. What if he offered her a business arrangement? A temporary engagement? Just for appearance's sake? Just until the Blackwood deal was secured. Before he could reconsider, he texted her, "Are you free for dinner tonight? I have a business proposition that might interest you." Her reply came quickly. "Intrigued? Martinelli's at 8. Martinelli's was a modest Italian restaurant downtown, far from the exclusive establishments Dominic typically frequented. As he entered, he spotted Nora immediately, seated in a corner booth, her curly hair pulled back, wearing a simple green dress. She looked up from her menu and waved. "So," she said as he slid into the seat across from her, "business propositions over spaghetti? You're full of surprises, Dominic." He took a breath. "Before we discuss anything, I need to be honest with you. I haven't been entirely truthful about who I am." Nora's expression grew cautious. "Are you married? A criminal? Both?" Neither, he assured her. "I'm Dominic Reed, CEO of Sentinel Technologies." Recognition dawned in her eyes. "The Sentinel Technologies? The AI security company?" He nodded, bracing for her reaction, the familiar shift he'd seen countless times when people realized his wealth and status. Instead, Nora leaned back and studied him. "Interesting. So the day we met, when you jumped in my car, ... you weren't just some random businessman late for a meeting." "No," he admitted. "I was a very specific businessman late for a meeting." A smile tugged at her lips. "And now, the mysterious business proposition makes more sense. What do you need, Mr. Reed?" "Corporate photography. Wedding photos retouched too." "Remove evidence of your impersonation crime. I need a fiancé," he stated plainly. Nora's fork clattered against her plate. "Excuse me?" Dominic outlined the situation with the Blackwood Group, explaining the investment's importance to his company's future and Harrison Blackwood's antiquated views on leadership and family values. "You want me to pretend to be your loving fiancé? To impress some old-fashioned investor?" Nora clarified, her expression unreadable. "For 3 weeks," Dominic specified, culminating in the Blackwood charity gala. "After the investment deal is secured, we can have an amicable breakup. And what would I get out of this arrangement?" Dominic had anticipated this question. Financial compensation, of course. But also, the Blackwood Gala attracts the most influential people in the city. As a photographer, the networking opportunities would be invaluable. I've researched your work, Nora. You're talented, but your client list could benefit from higher profile names. She studied him for a long moment. You've done your homework. It's what I do, he replied simply. And what would this performance entail? Attending a few social events together, learning basic information about each other to appear convincing. Perhaps being seen at a few restaurants? He hesitated. No physical requirements beyond perhaps holding hands or the occasional cheek kiss for authenticity. Nora twirled pasta around her fork, considering. I should be offended by this proposition. But you're not, Dominic observed. You're intrigued. Maybe I am. Or maybe I'm just wondering what happened to the man who spontaneously became a stranger's. Best man because it felt right in the moment. She set down her fork. That person seemed genuine. This feels calculated. Her words stung more than they should have. Business is calculated. It has to be. And is that all this is? Business? Her gaze was penetrating, seeing more than he was comfortable revealing. Dominic found himself unable to maintain his usual professional detachment. Enjoyed that day with you, he admitted. It was the most authentic interaction I've had in years. Everyone else either wants something from me or is intimidated by my position. And now you want something from me, she pointed out, as he acknowledged. But I'm being direct about it. Nora considered this, then leaned forward. I'll do it, but with my own conditions. First, payment goes to my sister's medical fund. Not to me directly. She needs spinal surgery that insurance won't fully cover. Dominic nodded, making a mental note to look into this further. Agreed. Second, this is strictly professional. We play our parts but maintain boundaries, of course. And third, Nora continued, her expression softening slightly, you have to show me the real Dominic Reed at least once during these 3 weeks. Not the CEO, not the businessman, not the fake fiancé. It's just you. The request was unexpected, touching. Something vulnerable he usually kept well guarded. I'm not sure I know how to do that anymore, he admitted quietly. Then this arrangement might benefit us both in ways neither of us anticipated. She extended her hand across the table.
Partners.
As Dominic took her hand, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just initiated something far more complex than a simple business arrangement. Her touch lingered a moment longer than necessary. And in that brief connection, he glimpsed a possibility he hadn't allowed himself to consider in years, that perhaps, behind the algorithms and acquisitions that defined his life, there might still be room for something genuine. Partners, he agreed, sealing a deal that felt strangely like both a beginning and an ending. Breaking point, the charade began smoothly enough. Dominic and Nora crafted their love story a chance meeting true, followed by coffee dates and gallery visits fabricated. They memorized details about each other. Nora's favorite book, The Night Circus, Dominic's childhood dog, a retriever named Edison. Her dislike of cilantro, his preference for jazz over classical. Their public appearances were carefully orchestrated, from casual brunches at visible tables to an accidental old encounter with a business associate at the theater. Prisha had arranged for a tasteful engagement. Ring elegant but not ostentatious. As Nora had insisted, first time Dominic slipped it onto her finger during a private rehearsal in his office, something shifted in the atmosphere between them. Too tight? He asked, noticing her sudden stillness. No, Nora replied, staring. At the ring, it's just ... Strange how something fake can look so real. 2 weeks into their arrangement, they attended a tech industry dinner that several Blackwood representatives would be attending. Nora wore a midnight blue gown that complemented the subtle sapphires in her engagement ring. As they entered the ballroom, Dominic found himself placing his hand instinctively at the small of her back, no longer needing to remind himself of these gestures of intimacy. Harrison Blackwood at 2 o'clock, he murmured into her ear. Distinguished gentleman with the silver hair and bow tie. Nora leaned into him naturally. I see him, and he definitely sees us. Dominic introduced Nora to various industry figures throughout the evening. She charmed them effortlessly, displaying a genuine interest in their work while subtly highlighting Dominic's visionary approach to medical technology. When Harrison Blackwood finally approached them, Dominic felt an unexpected surge of pride. As he presented Nora as his fiancée, Sentinel Technologies is doing remarkable work, Blackwood acknowledged, his gaze appraising both of them. I must admit, Reed, you've surprised me. I didn't take you for a man preparing to settle down. Sometimes the right person changes everything, Dominic replied, the practiced line feeling strangely sincere as Nora's fingers intertwined with his. Later that evening, as they shared a dance necessary for their public image, Nora rested, her head against his shoulder. We're convincing them, she whispered. Yes, Dominic agreed, though he was increasingly unsure who was being convinced of what. The lines between performance and reality had begun to blur. He found himself calling Nora during the day with no pretense of discussing their arrangement, just wanting to hear her perspective on things. She had begun leaving small tokens in his office, a photograph she'd taken of the city at dawn, a note with an obscure quote that made him think, the week before the Blackwood Gala. Dominic fulfilled Nora's third condition. He took her to his childhood home, a modest house in a working-class neighborhood that he still owned but rarely visited. He showed her the backyard where he'd built his first computer, the kitchen table where his mother had encouraged his dreams despite their limited means. People assume I was born into wealth, he explained as they sat on the worn steps of the back porch. The truth is, my mother worked 3 jobs to support us after my father left. Everything I've built started here. Nora's hand found his in the gathering dusk. Thank you for showing me this. It's strange, Dominic admitted. I've achieved everything I set out to accomplish. But sometimes I wonder if I've lost something essential along the way. Like what? She asked softly. Authenticity, spontaneity, the ability to connect without an agenda. He looked at her. Till I met you. The moment stretched between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. Nora leaned forward slightly and Dominic found himself closing the distance. Their kiss was tentative at first, then deepened with an intensity that surprised them both. When they finally pulled apart, Nora's expression was conflicted. This wasn't part of our agreement, she whispered. No, he agreed. It wasn't. The drive back to the city was quiet. Each lost in thought about boundaries that had been crossed and what it might mean. The night of the Blackwood Gala arrived with a sense of culmination. Dominic had arranged for Nora to attend not just as his fiancée, but also as one of the event photographers, ensuring she would make professional connections regardless of their personal situation. The evening progressed perfectly. Harrison Blackwood pulled Dominic aside to confirm that the investment deal would be finalized the following week. You've built an impressive company, Blackwood told him. And now you're clearly building a life to match. It's exactly what we look for in our partners. Victory should have felt sweeter. Instead, as Dominic watched Nora moving through the crowd with her camera, capturing moments with her unique eye, he felt a growing sense of dread. Their arrangement would conclude successfully, but then what? The thought of returning to his carefully ordered life without her spontaneity and warmth left him hollow. Later that evening, as the gala was winding down, Dominic was approached by a woman he didn't recognize. Mr. Reed, I'm Valerie Chen from the Chronicle, writing a feature on power couples in the tech industry. She gestured toward Nora. Your engagement has generated quite a buzz. I'd love to get a few quotes about how you met. Could respond, he noticed Nora had frozen across the room, her camera lowered, staring at them. She excused herself from her conversation and walked over. Hello, she said, her voice tight. I don't believe we've met, Valerie Chen, the reporter repeated. I was just asking your fiancé about your love story. Our readers are fascinated by romances that bridge different worlds. The tech billionaire and the struggling artist deeds, quite compelling. Nora's smile didn't reach her eyes, struggling. I wasn't aware my career was a subject of public concern. I simply meant Valerie began. I know exactly what you meant, Nora interrupted. Excuse us, please. She pulled Dominic into a quiet alcove off the main ballroom. Did you tell that reporter I was struggling? Of course not, Dominic replied, confused by her intensity. I've barely spoken to her, and how does she know about my different world? Nora's voice trembled slightly. Have you been discussing me with the press? Nora, I wouldn't because I just overheard something interesting, she continued. Apparently there's a rumor that you strategically timed our engagement to coincide with the Blackwood negotiations. Someone even suggested you hired a suitable partner to impress Harrison. Dominic felt a chill. Who told you that? Does it matter? Is it true? Her eyes searched his. You know the arrangement we made? He said carefully. That's not what I'm asking. Nora's voice dropped. Did you leak our story to generate publicity for the deal? Was I just another asset to be leveraged? No, Dominic insisted. Our arrangement was private. I would never expose you like that. But he could see in her eyes that something had broken. The trust they had carefully built over the past weeks was fracturing. Need some air, Nora said, removing her engagement ring and pressing it into his palm. I think I fulfilled my part of our bargain. Congratulations on your investment deal. Before he could stop her, she had disappeared into the crowd. By the time Dominic made it outside, the only trace of her was the blue sedan pulling away from the curb, carrying with it far more than just a business partner. Back in his empty penthouse that night, Dominic stared at the ring in his hand. The deal was secure. The charade had worked. By every objective measure, their arrangement had been a success. So why did it feel like the greatest failure of his life? Realignment for the first time in his career, Dominic Reed was distracted. The Blackwood deal had closed successfully, bringing Sentinel Technologies the capital needed to revolutionize medical AI. His executive team was ecstatic. The board was impressed. By all measurable metrics, Dominic should have been celebrating. Instead, he found himself standing at his office window each evening, watching blue sedans in the street below and feeling an emptiness that spreadsheets and algorithms couldn't fill. Nora hadn't responded to his calls or messages. Her social media accounts had gone quiet. Even her photography website displayed only a simple on hiatus notice. It was as though she had disappeared from his life as suddenly as she had entered it. You look terrible, Prisha announced bluntly, entering his office with the day's schedule. Is this about the photographer? Dominic didn't bother denying it. I made a mistake. Several, I imagine, Prisha replied, setting down her tablet. After 5 years as his assistant, she was perhaps the closest thing he had to a friend, starting with treating a relationship like a business transaction. It was a business transaction, Dominic insisted. Prisha gave him a knowing look. Is it because business transactions don't usually end with the CEO staring mournfully out windows and keeping her? A photograph on his desk. Dominic glanced at the picture. Nora had given him a sunrise over the city, taken from an unexpected angle that made familiar buildings look new and full of possibility. The Blackwood deal is done, Prisha continued. The pretense isn't necessary anymore. So why? Are you still thinking about her? The question lingered as Dominic went through the motions of his day. Why indeed? Perhaps because with Nora he had glimpsed a version of himself he'd forgotten existed, someone capable of spontaneity, of connection, of seeing value beyond balance, sheets, and market projections. That evening, found himself driving to the modest Italian restaurant where he had proposed their arrangement. On impulse, he asked for the same corner booth. We haven't seen you in a while, the elderly owner remarked as he brought Dominic's drink. No more dinner dates with the pretty lady with the curly hair. We had disagreement, Dominic admitted. The man nodded sagely. My wife and I married 52 years. You know how many disagreements? Thousands? He made an expansive gesture. But the secret is not avoiding disagreements. The secret is deciding which is more important, being right or being together. After dinner, Dominic drove without conscious destination, eventually finding himself parked outside the Thornfield Gardens where they had attended the wedding. The venue was dark now, the gardens silent under a canopy of stars. His phone buzzed with an email notification. Mechanically, he checked it. Tan froze. It was a photography newsletter with the subject line, Bennett Photography, new exhibition opening. Nora was showcasing her work at a small gallery downtown. The opening was tomorrow evening. Dominic spent the night weighing his options, his analytical mind cataloging scenarios and outcomes. By morning, he had made his decision. The gallery was crowded when he arrived the following evening. Dominic lingered at the entrance, suddenly uncertain. What if she didn't want to see him? What if there was nothing left to salvage? He steeled himself and stepped inside, immediately spotting Nora. Across the room, she was speaking with a small group of admirers. Looking elegant in a simple black dress, her curly hair loose around her shoulders, she hadn't seen him yet. This gave Dominic a chance to observe the exhibition. The photographs lined the walls. In careful arrangement, turban landscapes, intimate portraits, moments of everyday beauty captured with extraordinary perception. But it was the central installation that caught his breath. A series of images told a story of a wedding where the subjects' faces were always just out of frame, hands exchanging rings. Laughter captured in the blurred motion of a dance, interspersed. Were photographs of city corners, coffee shops, the back seat of a blue sedan, all places he recognized from their time together. The installation was titled simply, Authenticity. As he moved closer, he noticed small captions beneath each image, fragments of thought rather than explanations. The truth in a moment when no one is watching. What remains when pretense falls away? The space between performance and reality. The final photograph showed two hands almost touching across a table, a ring catching the light between them. The caption read, "What might have been real had. We allowed it. It's not for sale." Dominic turned to find Nora standing beside him, her expression guarded but not hostile. "I wasn't looking to buy," he replied softly. "Then why are you here, Dominic?" He had rehearsed explanations, apologies, reasoned arguments. Instead, what emerged was simple truth. "Because I miss you." Something flickered in her eyes, caution warring with something softer. "The deal is done. The charade is over. There's no business reason for us to interact anymore." "I know," he acknowledged. "That's why I'm here as myself. It's just me. No agenda, no proposition, no performance." Nora studied him, searching for insincerity. The woman from the Chronicle was working on a tip from a rival company, Dominic. "Finished. We traced the leak." "It wasn't me, Nora. I would never use you that way." She nodded slowly, accepting this, but still hesitant. "Even so, we built something on a foundation of deception. How could anything real grow from that?" "Maybe it can't," Dominic admitted. "But I think about that day in your car, before any arrangements. Or pretenses. There was something genuine there. I think there was something genuine in the moments that followed. 2 moments that had nothing to do with Harrison Blackwood or business deals." He gestured to her photographs. "See truth where others don't? What did you see with us?" Nora's professional composure softened slightly. "I saw possibilities. Moments when the act became less of an act." She hesitated. "But I also saw the damage that comes from blurring the lines between reality and performance. My art explores that boundary, but my life needs clarity." "Then let me be clear," Dominic said, taking a deliberate step closer. "I'm not here as a CEO or a business partner. I'm here as a man who jumped into the wrong car on the right day, who pretended to be someone else and accidentally found himself in the process." A small smile tugged at her lips. "That's quite a line." "Have you been rehearsing?" "All day," he admitted, and they both laughed, breaking the tension. Nora's expression grew serious again. "I can't go back to pretending. I'm not asking you to," Dominic replied. "I'm asking for a chance to start over. No false pretenses, no arrangements. Just coffee with a man who admires your work and would like to know the artist better." She considered this, her photographer's eye assessing him with penetrating clarity. "I close up here in an hour. There's a cafe around the corner that stays open late." It wasn't a declaration of forgiveness nor a promise of reconciliation. It was something more valuable, an opportunity freely given to build something authentic. "I'll wait," Dominic said simply, as Nora returned to her guests. Dominic wandered through the gallery, truly seeing her work. Each photograph revealed her gift for finding beauty in unexpected places, truth in overlooked moments. In capturing the world through her lens, Nora had taught him to see differently, to recognize value beyond the metrics and measurements that had defined his life. An hour later, they walked together through nighttime streets to a small cafe where no one knew them as a power couple or business associates. Just 2 people sharing coffee and conversation, discovering each other all over again. but this time without scripts or expectations. When Dominic reached across the table, Nora's hand met his halfway. No rings, no pretense, no audience to impress. Just a genuine connection, tentative but hopeful. Between two people who had played at love until they forgot they were playing. Sometimes, Dominic reflected as their fingers intertwined, the most valuable things in life couldn't be quantified. In investment portfolios or quarterly reports, sometimes the greatest return came from the simplest investment, the courage to be authentic, to risk rejection, to begin again. Outside the cafe window, a blue sedan drove past, a reminder of wrong turns that sometimes led exactly where you needed to go.